we're here. We're not even supposed to be here. Like, we had this whole plan. We weren't going to record this week. We had a recording in the hopper from an SFR we did in person in Fulton County. That was just going to roll with our recording for the week. I just got back yesterday from a very short trip to Miami with Abby and our little dino. If you look really closely, you can see that the peeling has already begun from my sunburn. It's real sexy. I can promise you that. So we were like, you know what? Nothing's happening. Let's take advantage. Let's just run the in-person SFR from Fulton County. Let's skip a recording. And then literally minutes after we made that decision, Dick Durbin announced his retirement. And then later that day, Jan Schakowsky said she wasn't going to run. Other people started announcing, and we're like, well, I guess we're doing a recording. So we are here reluctantly. What's the Groundhog Day phrase? We've emerged reluctantly, but alertly. We're here. So we might as well make the most of it. You're stuck with me, Collin. You're stuck with Chris. You're stuck with Michael. We're trying something a little bit this year. We're going to try to see if we can do a little balance. Maybe some weeks have guests, some weeks just have the three of us and have a little more fun and bring a little bit more of the entertainment that some people have been asking us for. We've gotten lots of requests for more jokes at Chris's expense. So this will give us more time to do that. So I don't know, guys. What do you think? Are you here by force or by choice? Did Lane threaten you?
Colin, it was my understanding that we will be discussing the upcoming papal conclave in the aftermath of the death of the Roman pontiff. Unfortunately, it appears that's not the case. I have been bamboozled, and I am once again stuck on an afternoon talking about Illinois politics instead of the things that are really close to my heart, and that's God and His holy church.
Well,
You've been bamboozled.
I was just gonna say, obviously, Colin and I, we both got the wear red memo. Chris either missed that or is intentionally wearing blue because he's actually a Democrat.
That's right. You have seen
Well,
through my facade, Michael. It has been me this entire time, an agent of the Democratic Party sent to sabotage your podcast and to make sure that Republicans get the wrong ideas. You got me.
Michael, is your shirt actually red?
Yeah, it's red.
Is it? So
Red, like
mine's pink, and I'm not ashamed to say it. It's just my. If you can't tell, I don't know what's going on with Zoom today. It's like doing something weird around my head here. It's blurring my hair, which I don't know. I'm having a decent hair day, so I don't know why it's doing that. It's making my pink shirt look red. But look at this. Like it's even being weird on this. Like I don't know what the heck's going on. I don't have blur on, so I don't know what's going on. So literally, even my computer is saying, "What the hell are you doing? We were supposed to have a break." Anyways, we're here. So let's make the most of it. Obviously, the big news this week, the whole reason we're doing this dang podcast this week, is Dick Durbin has announced his retirement. So there's a lot to talk about around the retirement and who else might run for it and blah, blah, blah. We're going to take this piece by piece. So let's start with the fact that Durbin has retired. And it seems like pretty much every Democrat in Illinois is scrambling over each other trying to announce for this seat. As our resident Democrat, we've got to start with Chris, especially since he's the one who said that Dick Durbin wasn't going to retire. He promised, he bet people that Durbin wasn't going to retire. So now, Chris, you owe money. You've got to admit on air you're wrong. Like, I don't know if you're going to be able to handle this.
I have seen, and therefore I believe. Blessed are they who did not see and yet believed. Yeah, for the record, I never said Durbin wasn't retiring. I just said that I wouldn't believe it until I saw the press release or the obituary. Unfortunately, we got neither. We actually got a video, so it made me wrong in any case here, Colin. But but you're right. I mean, it's going to be very interesting over these next few months. We already have people jumping in here. Juliana Stratton, the lieutenant governor, who already had said that she was going to run if Durbin didn't run. So she's jumping in the race. The word is that we can expect an announcement from Robin Kelly next week that she is going to be running. Lauren Underwood's been doing polling that's been available to the public. So obviously she's going to probably jump in here at some point. And everybody just kind of assumes Raj is running for this because he's got 19 million in the bank. And he's kind of doing a state tour at the moment. So or was doing a state tour.
The son of downstate, Raja Krishnanorthy.
Hey, you know what? I actually looked into that, Colin, and
I looked into it and I told you.
Okay, well, we don't have any proof that that's actually what transpired here.
I mean, the first person to say it gets to take credit for it. So
perhaps perhaps Michael led me in direction to where I looked it up. But in any case, yes, Raja Krishnamurti was raised in Peoria. He went to high school in Peoria, where he was the valedictorian. Now, if we really consider Peoria to be
Right?
truly,
Chris, isn't that telling? I mean, how many people do you know from up here who count like they would say Peoria is downstate when in reality Peoria is like it's barely even it's like north central Illinois. I mean, it's not
Uh-huh.
downstate, it's central Illinois at best.
if you're not from Chicago or any of the collar counties or suburban area, you're from downstate. That's just a reality of the situation because our politics is so like Chicago centered that like if you're
It's
just
true,
not
but like, doesn't that bode badly for Raja that he considers Peoria? I mean, I know it's just a talking point, I get it, but like, that just shows how little he knows about the state. That if he's going to call Peoria downstate, I know plenty of our viewers and listeners are going to be like, "Yeah, you think Peoria is downstate?" Like,
Well, you,
that's
you think, I mean, all the names that we're hearing right now are, mostly from that Chicagoland area. And as of right now, like, that's a lane that he can, attempt to try to own that, like, hey, I'm from downstate. I know what it's like.
I mean, I get it. He's trying to create a lane where none exists. I mean, I think what he's going to run into is a lot of Southern Central Illinois voters don't tend to, even in the Democratic Party, aren't voting high clip for minority candidates. So, I mean, I don't know that that's the lane I would create if I was him. But I can't imagine no candidates will announce from Central Illinois, Southern Illinois, Western Illinois. I mean, for the longest time, Chris, wasn't Durbin's whole succession plan somebody from either Western or Central Illinois? I mean, Budzinski is sort of Durbin's acolyte. Before Budzinski, it was what's her face from Western Illinois, who,
Gary
Gary
Bustos.
yeah,
Bustos.
Bustos. Like, if Durbin is going to pick sides here, I don't picture him picking Raja Krishnamoorthi.
Well, I think that's still yet to be determined here. I think Durbin will put his hand on the scale whenever after whenever Pritzker decides he's announces he's going to endorse Juliana Stratton. He'll do that after that fact. One of the interesting things that I've seen over the past 24 hours or so is that the name Mike Ferricks has come up, which Ferricks wasn't really a name that was thrown out there for this race that much, at least from what I had been hearing in the years going up to this. But if you actually look at the makeup of the race as it is so far, you have Robin Kelly, black woman. You have Juliana Stratton, black woman. Lauren Underwood, black woman. And Raja Krishnamoorthi, who's Indian American. There isn't a white guy lane here. There isn't. That's kind of what you were saying earlier, Collin, that like we're talking about a lot of minority candidates here, and racial politics still exists to some extent in
Especially the Democratic primary. Yeah.
Right. So if Mike Ferricks decides he's going to run for U.S. Senate, I think he has a lane. Is he the favorite? No, I don't think that at all. But if I was going to bet a dog here, because I think the favorite's Juliana Stratton. That's just me putting that out there right now. She's going to have Pritzker's money, but anything could, of course, happen. But if I'm betting a dog here, I might put my money on Mike Ferricks because if we're going to have black women, if you're going to have three black women run for U.S. Senate, that's going to divide the black vote to some extent. Obviously, suburban voters are going to be taken into that consideration also. But I think Ferricks, if he gets enough of the downstate vote, which he will, because he's from further south Illinois than the rest.
Champaign is in downstate.
He's from not Chicagoland, so he definitely has a lane there with the rest of Illinois. We got to figure out a term for this stuff, but he has a lane there, and he has a lane with white Democratic primary voters in the suburbs. Now, it's also going to matter who organized labor gets behind. Yep. That's going to matter a lot in the suburban Chicagoland area. I would anticipate, based on historical precedent, they'll probably get behind Stratton because she's the incumbent lieutenant governor, and they want to stay good with Pritzker, even though he's not really doing nothing for them right now. So I would, but this is all speculation at this point, at the very least.
It's early. I mean, doesn't candidate quality come into play here? I mean, the reason why Ferrick's name doesn't come up a lot is because Ferrick's just isn't a high quality candidate. He's consistently the lowest performing statewide candidate. And there's a reason for that. He doesn't raise money. He's not an overly likable guy. He's not as overly ambitious. He doesn't get his name out there as much. There's a reason why he's not like mentioned a lot. He's just not a super high quality candidate. I would love it. I mean, aside from Stratton, if we had to get somebody else as the nominee from a Republican perspective, I certainly would love to go against Ferricks. He's a heck of a lot less dynamic than some of these other candidates. But I think there's a reason why Ferricks isn't often mentioned in the list of top tier candidates.
I am still interested to see if any other white candidates throw their
Yeah, I
name
mean,
into the ring.
let's be real. Rom's name's been put out there. Michael, didn't you say I don't believe this? But like Sheila Simon's name is being thrown out there. Like every freaking name under the book's going to be put out there.
Yeah, that was going around downstate. Like, oh, Sheila Simon. Like, look at
Another
the
race she
last
can run for
name.
and lose.
Like, nobody knows. Remember, I mean, people, no one under the age of 50 knows who Sheila Simon is,
No,
you know?
no,
I think Rom would be fun, at least
would be.
if you're a Republican, Rom's fun because he's a bomb thrower, so he's just gonna speak truth to power to whatever extent he does that to the Democratic Party. And frankly, I think there's also a lane for that because again, he'd be the only white candidate,
Yep.
and there are enough people who I think would look at the rest of the Democratic primary going as far to the left as humanly possible because we know that they're going to do, and then you're going to have Rahm Emanuel come in here and say, "Listen, guys, you guys are all idiots. This is what's got to get done here." Will he win? Again, probably not. But again, another dog that wouldn't be a waste putting some money on would be someone like Rahm Emanuel in this case.
Chris, I mean, let's talk about ideology because we haven't talked about that yet, but you just mentioned it. Like you talk about lanes. I was a little shocked if you watched the announcement video from Stratton. It was very Pritzker-esque. It was very middle of the road, a little bit milk toast. It certainly wasn't going to the left, and I kind of assumed that Stratton would be the front runner because of the names mentioned. Stratton is the most progressive, but seems like she's coming out the gate trying to look more like the moderate, or at least whatever you call that from the Democratic Party. And I don't know that that's the lane for her. I mean, if she tries to go in that lane, you've got a bunch of other candidates on this list who would all look have more bona fides in that space than she would. I just assumed she was a front runner like you did because I figured she'd go far left, and that's obviously going to play a Democratic primary. If she doesn't, does that open up the door for one of these other candidates to go on her left and beat her in a primary? Does that mean that a Robin Kelly, a Lauren Underwood, I mean, I don't know, when Alexi could go to her left and win that primary? I
The
mean,
problem,
I think Alexi's going for mayor, let's be real. But like if Stratton is going to try to play this middle of the road sort of game, the Democratic Party right now, that's not what they're looking for in a primary. I think like I don't know what she's doing, but I think it's a mistake. Not that I care, but I want her to be the nominee. I need her to do better.
well, I think that it's still early enough to where I didn't think her announcement video was particularly good for the record. I didn't think. I mean, it was fine, but this is something where she was like obviously preparing for this outcome for
Yeah.
months now.
I mean,
And
kudos to her
And
and
it
her team.
was,
Like that, they had the press release, the video, they had it already. That's what a professional operation does. Which, for all of Pritzker's faults and failures, they've got a professional organization over there. So all these other candidates who are now, putting their stuff together, Stratton just proved what it takes to win a statewide race by being ready immediately.
right, and I agree with you. She should be given kudos for that. I just think the product could have been better,
Oh, I agree.
knowing that they
I
did
agree.
all of that.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't expect this to be the consistent message throughout. I think that they are gonna once more people jump in, you're going to have to start seeing a little bit of contrast here. But the problem is there isn't really much contrast here. There isn't like a single candidate in this race. I mean, Stratton kind of, but Stratton really doesn't have like a real record or anything that we could go off of that would say
5 minutes as a state rep, and then Light Gov, who happens to show up on press releases and press pops. Yeah,
I mean,
right.
you basically saw that in her announcement video, right? It was very uninspiring. It was kind of like she had the racial politics in there, which you would expect. And then she basically like said, "Hey, Pritzker did these things and I was there." Like it
yep,
was very
yep,
like,
yep.
okay, like what? Can you give us a little more? And then you get on Facebook today. I got on Facebook earlier today. I mean, I'm on Facebook all day, but
It's
I was
true.
on Facebook and I saw ads for Juliana saying, be a day one supporter, donate to me now. So they're
Yep.
blanketing the state, with no regard for partisan affiliation. Because obviously, if I'm seeing that ad, like that's a wasted dollar.
Yeah, but they got the money to do it. And again, it shows they're the only ones who had the operation in place, which is kind of shocking. I mean, you had to see Durbin's fundraising the last 2 quarters and know that this was coming, or at least be prepared for it. Like, if you want to be ready for a once in a generational opportunity, that's how it is in Illinois. I mean, you want to run for Senate, you get one shot, and then whoever's in there is going to be there for 30 plus years. So, like, you should have had it already. I mean, the fact that Raja with 19 plus $1 million didn't have everything ready where he could just hit the button and go the moment this came out. I mean, it's a little bit political malpractice. I mean,
Well, you think,
this
you
was
can
not a shock announcement.
I think, you can, I don't know how much you can really read into it, but obviously, we saw kind of that this was coming, right? That Durbin's likely not going to run again, like you said, based on some of the statements that he made, where, he wasn't really taking a position one way or another on this. And also the fundraising numbers. Like Pritzker and Juliana, they were obviously coordinating, getting ducks in a row. Did Durbin not tip off any of these other people that are, out there and say, hey, this is when this is coming out, so anybody else could be prepared?
I
Maybe
mean,
he's gonna,
the
I don't know
question
if
would
he
be,
has a
Michael.
favorite already or if he's, just waiting.
That's my question, Michael. Like, I guess maybe he's just going to let it play for a little bit and pick a favorite, but that's just not Dick Durbin. I mean, and it's less Durbin. It's not Durbin's political team. They are certainly, like, they consider this their seat. So I don't know how they would ever let a world go by where they didn't know when the announcement was going to happen, have someone else prepped ready to go. Like, that's what is a little bit surprising, because for years it's always been sort of, you could tell their plan. Like, when Durbin's done, we pick who takes the seat. And as Chris has reported multiple times, there's no love lost between Durbin and Pritzker. They're not going to let Stratton get this thing. So why they didn't have somebody, like you said, why they didn't have somebody tipped off ready to go is kind of surprising.
Well, and also I think, it's like how we've been talking for years. I mean, before this podcast even started, in 2018, even people were saying, oh, when Dick Durbin's done, it's going to be Sherry Bustos. When Dick Durbin's done, it's going to be Andy Minar. Like, there was all these names that were always floating around. Well, a lot of those people are no longer really even part of the equation,
Yeah.
right? These are all like relatively new names that we're hearing like in this mix. A
Yeah.
lot of them weren't even on the radar, 4 years ago.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, Budzinski, people would assume Budzinski would be high on his list, but is she ready to make that jump? And is there a lane for her at this point? I mean, she could certainly be the central Southern Illinois candidate, which obviously Durbin played to great effect early in his career. But I think obviously a lot of people are going to fight her for that lane too. So, and she's not, I mean, we don't even know if she's running, but it's a little surprising how it was all handled, because usually especially this group's a little more orchestrated.
I believe that Budzinski is on the record saying that she's not interested in it, even before this announcement came down. Now, people lie all the time, and I don't think we should take too much stock into people who said that they're not running, because things can change at a moment's notice. I think there's two possible reasons for what's happening right now with the Durbin people. The first reason is based on some conversations I've had. It seems like a lot of people were in the dark about this. Like, and maybe they just didn't want to tell old Chris because he's a stupid Republican on the podcast. It's very possible. But the conversations I had for a while now have just been no idea, couldn't tell you, nobody knows, this is going to be stupid. So it's very likely that many people were left in the dark about this. Alternatively, if we want to put on the conspiracy hats here, there might be a strategy behind this, because I'm interested in the fact that Robin Kelly apparently is going to announce next week for this seat, because Robin Kelly, as many know, was basically Durbin's girl in the state party chairmanship for the Democratic Party of Illinois. And she was ousted by Pritzker's people with Lisa Hernandez retaking that spot. So I'm interested to see if Robin Kelly is running to win this thing, or is if Robin Kelly is getting in because she's older. Maybe she just didn't want to run for Congress anymore. That was a rumor that people had heard, that she might not run for Congress again. Maybe she's getting in as a last hurrah, with the idea to split some of that black and suburban vote from Juliana Stratton, and then the real candidate will emerge with Durbin's full endorsement, and it's going to turn into a duke out between those two people. I think for last thing, I also think that Underwood's kind of going to be on the outside looking at all of this. It doesn't seem like Underwood necessarily falls into either category here. I'm sure she does. Everybody falls on one side of the Pritzker-Durbin divide to some extent, but like based on like things that people have said in the press and on the record, is like Raja is more likely to go with Durbin probably at this point. And if this does turn into Stratton versus Durbin versus Raja, then that might be where the divide actually happens. But again, still
Chris,
speculation.
but here's the thing: if Stratton stays more towards the middle, which let's be real, in the Democratic Party, the middle is still pretty far left, but whatever. If she does try to play this, less progressive angle, the more general election route, just assuming she's going to win the primary, Underwood is the most likely that I could see who could flank her on her left. And she's got the bona fides to do it. I mean, she hasn't had to face tough enough opponents where people realize the kind of votes she's made in DC. She does have a super progressive profile. She just hasn't been held to account for it. And I would love to see her have a tough race, because even going back to her race against Holmgren before you two were even born, joking, but not by that much. Even going back to her race against Holmgren, the oppo on her was pretty significant. But Randy, being the family man, the guy who just wasn't ready for today's style of politics, sadly, wasn't willing to use most of it. So she hasn't been vetted. There is oppo there that certainly would come out in a Democratic primary, and it'd be nice to see her finally get tarnished a little bit, because she hasn't really had a real race like that where she's had to face her oppo. So I could see, number one, I could see that happening where she actually has to face some of that, because Pritzker's team, Durbin's team, they'll have no qualms about going after their opponents. But if Stratton and the rest of these try to play a little bit more towards the middle with a general election profile, she could run far to their lefts. And honestly, if she did, I wouldn't mind facing her in the general.
Well, one thing I'm interested in is I'm interested to see where these candidates are going to take a lane on the Israel-Palestine thing, because really, when you want to talk about ideology, that's where the real breakdown in the Democratic Party nowadays is. Maybe not necessarily reflective of the overall electorate, but at least in terms of the party, when you're if you want to get the far, far left vote, that 35th Ward vote, you're going to be more pro-Palestine, and more moderate Democrats are going to be more pro-Israel. Yeah. And none of these candidates really strike me outright as someone who could take the pro-Palestinian lane.
So Underwood could. I think Stratton would struggle with that. I mean, she really can't, having been Pritzker's running mate and being so closely tied to Pritzker. So Stratton can't. Again, it's another situation where I think Underwood could go that far left lane. Because it's not like, look at Underwood's district. I mean, it's not like Underwood is having to really appeal to that older Democratic Jewish vote. Maybe she just says, hey, I don't care about the North Shore. I don't care about Chicago. I'm going to take the far left progressive, or those pockets of Chicago. I'm going to take the far left progressive angle and really go the pro-Palestine route. Again, looking at this list, she might be the most likely to be able to do that.
I don't know. If you're like Warren Underwood or Raja, an elected member of Congress, I don't know what positions those two have kind of staked out on this issue like so far, but there have to be votes where they're already on the record.
Yeah, Underwood is on the record. I don't know about Raja. I haven't watched him as closely, but Underwood is absolutely on the record here.
Again, in the Palestine side or the Israel side?
Palestine side.
Okay, so if that's the case, then you're right, Cox. I wasn't well versed enough on how those votes broke down to where I could have said that. But if that's actually the case, and she's already on the record as being more pro-Palestine, then you are 100% correct. Like, she can take that lane then and get that more progressive vote because of that. And I as we're seeing, like, Arab American politics is getting pretty strong here, especially in my neck of the woods. So that could be a real sizable voting block for her if she actually goes.
I'm looking at her statements. She has tried to play both sides. I will clarify that. I'm just looking at some of her statements. She condemned the Hamas attack, but then she was pushing on the peace side. So she is trying to play both sides a little bit here. But I'm looking at, let's see, the no votes, Garcia, Ramirez, Jackson, and Underwood. So, I mean, there are some votes here she's taken that would be more on the Palestine side. So, I mean, while she isn't hardline there, she could go that route. She has enough in her record that she could go that route.
Well, and here it's got Raja saying, calling Hamas terrorists and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not the profile Raja has created.
No. Right. So we're gonna need to see how that breaks down. But secondly, on the whole ideology point I wanted to make earlier was, I think other than Israel-Palestine, I'm not sure where the ideological divide is really going to come with this group of people, or even this Democratic primary in general. And that's why, part of the reason why I think if there was any overall strategy behind what what Stratton was doing, was she did go after Trump during her video.
But they're all going to do that.
What? But
they're all going to do that.
Right, but that might just be the strategy here where everybody's going to
I don't know. I
take.
mean, listen, when you're trying to build a profile, I mean, this is what I do for all of our candidates and our different clients. Like you're looking for the strongest contrast. Every single one's going to attack Trump. There's no lane there. There's no contrast there. It's a requirement. You must do that or don't even run. So I don't know that there's a lane there for her.
Well, I guess
I'm not
there's
saying
different levels of aggressiveness on that,
Well,
right?
that isn't that the
They-
key, right? That's
yeah.
the split in the party right now is approach. I mean, ask. I mean, obviously we'll talk about Schakowsky in a little bit. There's this. This is why a lot of these Democrats are getting these opponents in their primaries is the approach. It's the style, right? Let's talk about who we'd want to face as Republicans, or in Chris's case, fake Republicans. Who would Republicans want to face? I mean, the point here is we want the Democrats to duke this out, run as far left as they possibly can in the primary. It's still a D11 state. Let's be real here. Are we favored to win this? Hell no. But our best shot is that the Democrats nominate somebody as progressive as possible. So Stratton, if she actually runs as the Stratton we know she is, or maybe somebody running to her left if she doesn't do it. That's if Republicans are going to have any shot, and it's a very, very small one, but if we're going to have any shot, we need the nominee out of the Democratic primary to be somebody as progressive as possible. And right now, they're all tacking towards more of a general election bent, which opens up. I mean, listen, this is early. By the time we get to next March, this race is going to look way different in a lot of ways, including the primary voters are going to force them, and the grassroots people are going to force these candidates to answer questionnaires, answer questions, come out and speak, and they're going to push them to be further and further left. Doesn't matter where they announce today, they're going to get dragged ever further leftward in today's Democratic primary.
I think the best candidate for Republicans to go against is Stratton. I don't think anybody would really disagree with that.
Yeah.
Realistically, Stratton is actually the least known person out of any of these guys because
Yep.
they did dump a lot of money on her in 2016 when she took out Duncan. But
that's forever ago, and otherwise,
yeah,
she's a footnote on the yard signs. I mean, I've got poll
right.
numbers that tells me that her name ID is way lower than they'd like you to think it is.
Well, yeah,
And
and
they're
that was
gonna
just one district in the state, that money was spent in.
right, but they're going to pump a lot of money into her this time, certainly, especially if JB is in fact backing her. But the problem is like I don't think she necessarily comes off as like the best candidate. Like I think Lauren Underwood, again, the oppo is correct, Colin. I'm not disagreeing with that, but she's like, the same messaging she's used. Yeah, same messaging she's used ever since 2018. Raja has had some of the best TV commercials in Illinois political history. People know who Raja Krishnamurti is, or at least they know who Raja is as a politician. So he's definitely going to have a better brand there. I think he's probably the worst candidate Republicans could hope for in the general election because
I wouldn't say worst, but I mean, I certainly would rather have Stratton over him for sure, or Underwood if she goes way far left. Like I would certainly rather have one of those, but I don't think Raja isn't like the overly scary candidate here.
I mean, I think it just guarantees a loss at that. Like, I don't think there's a big enough lane against that you have against Raja.
Yeah, but most of these candidates, again, it's a D11 state with the Republican Party that has limited infrastructure and no candidate bench. I mean, let's be real. Most of our opponents are going to come in way, 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 way heavy favorites. So yeah, Raja is one of those, but he doesn't scare me. I mean, there's some names on this list of people who are either thinking about doing it or are being talked about as doing it. Like a Baczynski, we'd never beat her, never even come close. Maybe Alexei just because of his baggage, but I think voters have moved on from that. Frericks, as milquetoast as he is, because he's so boring, maybe he'd be real tough to beat. Mendoza, I think, would win it pretty heavy, though. Again, I know she's heard Alexei are targeting Mayor. I'm not as afraid of like a Robin Kelly. I think Rahm would be interesting. I think in some ways he'd be harder to beat, and in some ways he'd be easier to beat. I don't know. It's an interesting list.
I mean, I think of it, ideally it would be Juliana Stratton that we're up against. If I had to pick like a second place like person, I would say Lauren Underwood, just because I think that opens up some opportunities elsewhere. Not necessarily Senate, but
talk about Raja for a second. But the interesting thing about Raja is that he's always been. I live near him, so I've obviously followed him pretty closely. And what I think people just need to recognize is Raja is always the guy that people keep around because they want his money, but they don't actually want to back him in terms of the Democratic infrastructure. I mean, over and over and over, they keep Raja in the room, but they don't ever actually like give him a position or let him like move up. I'm predicting that's exactly what will happen here too. I mean, yeah, $19 million, $20 million is a crap ton of hard dollars. Like you cannot write him off here, but it's just what always happens with Raja. And I don't know what it goes to. To me, it's the fact that the Democratic Party, when it comes to racial minorities, unless you're African American or maybe every once in a while Hispanic or like Asian, but especially like not Indian Asian, they'll occasionally want to push you forward. But Indians over and over. I'm shocked they stick with the Democratic Party. I'll be honest, because they're just constantly mistreated, kind of like Hispanics are, constantly mistreated by the Democratic Party. Never given a voice, never given a megaphone or an opportunity, a spotlight. Raja is the epitome of that. I just, based on his history, I think that happens again here. Yes, you can't count out his money, but that's sort of that dark horse bet I'd make right now. That just because the Democrats always find some way to push Raja out, I bet it happens again.
Well, and I wonder if maybe there's a lane there just with that in mind, where it's like he's kind of the outsider, like dark horse candidate, and all these other people are going to be getting all these high profile endorsements. And, with the Democrat electorate as aggravated as they are right now, maybe they gravitate more towards, a Raja, because it's like, well, Dick Durbin hasn't really been fighting very hard or in the minds of Democrats. So they're like, well, he endorsed so and so. Maybe that means I need to back this other guy.
Yeah, it's possible. Let's go to our next topic. We've this has been a good discussion with only three of us. We get to go real deep in the weeds. It's kind of fun. Let's talk about Republicans. I mean, is there any viable Republicans that can run? Obviously, the conversation has to start with Darren LaHood. Let's talk about that. There's other names out there. Tom Demmer, I loved his tweet. We'll have Lane bring it up on screen. I just chuckled at it and moved on. And then some people actually like reported on it and said Tom Demmer is considering it. It's like, do you not read the sarcasm here? But okay, whatever. But apparently there are two candidates who have announced. We've obviously talked about the one who doesn't really look like a real candidate. So, I mean, we'll give him a chance to prove he's a real candidate, but so far he hasn't shown that he's any more than a tier three candidate. Apparently, Doug Bennett has announced. I don't see any record of that announcement, but I do know I talked to Doug like 2 years ago, and he was making plans to run right now. So I'm not shocked. I don't even see it on Facebook anywhere. So of the Republican candidates, there are supposedly two that have announced, neither of which have proven so far that they're top tier candidates who can raise the money and compete in a race like this. Let's talk Darren. I mean, people are trying to stoke those rumors that Darren wants to run for this. I honestly don't believe it, but what do you guys think?
Well, it seems like there's a lot of talking out of both sides of the mouth on that one, right? There's been statements put out, like kind of alluding to it, from LaHood's camp, but then you also hear reports that, there's no interest whatsoever. There was an article today, saying that there was. So, I mean, obviously he would be the best candidate if he decided to do it.
Let's
I mean,
be
he's
real.
got
I mean, he's the dream candidate. I would absolutely want him to run, but I mean, LaHood has been fairly risk averse. He's high up in leadership, and he's 2 or 4 years away from being like inner circle leadership in DC in a safe seat. That's a lot to give up for in 2026. What will be, even with Darren at the top of the ticket, a tough election to win. Obviously, every Republican should be begging him to do it. Like we obviously need him, but if you're Darren, I just doesn't seem to fit the mold here that he would actually do this. But I mean, if he does it, awesome. It'd be great for our party. I'll believe it when I see it, I guess is my point.
I think if you're Darren LaHood and you have any like even a small interest in running for the seat, you got to start polling now and seeing like where the Democratic Party looks. Also check the Republican primary because as conservative as Darren is, let's remember his father is like anti-Trumper in chief who endorsed Kamala Harris.
I mean, he will have to deal with that for sure.
Right. And the last thing you want if you're someone like Darren LaHood is you run in the Republican primary and then you get beat by some nobody candidate because your father endorsed Kamala Harris and now you're never Trump rhino. So I think like you have to do
to be clear, it'd be very hard to paint Darren as anti-Trump based on the fact that like he's been endorsed by Trump, he's said a lot of positive things about Trump. But you're 100% right. Anybody who wants to run to Darren's right, that's what they would use. You're 100% correct.
So I would pull both sides of the aisle and then see where Stratton is. Again, assuming that they agree with us that Stratton's probably the best candidate to go against. See where Stratton is. Pull it throughout the next couple of months. You're gonna have to spend a little money, but who cares? and then see if Stratton moves in like the way beginning. If it looks like Stratton's got this, maybe you do this. Maybe you still don't. I don't know. Maybe you're risk adverse. But
All right, Chris, I think that's my worry here, though. I mean, the right play for Darren is to do exactly what you're saying. Just wait, play footsie with it, keep your name in the press for a few months, raise some extra money, because why the hell not? But that does leave our party in a pretty tough position in that, like, knowing Darren is the best we could ever hope for, you're not going to recruit anybody else because you're hoping Darren gets in. So it's the right thing for Darren, not necessarily the right thing for the party. If Darren's not going to do it, we kind of need to know so we can go find somebody else. But I think you're right, Chris. That is the right play for LaHood. And you know what? LaHood has earned the opportunity to do that. So I won't blame him if that's what he does. But it does put the party in a tough spot because if we're not going to have LaHood, we got to find somebody.
You want to know what the real answer is, Colin, of what's going to happen here? It's going to be like that petition start first week of August. It's going to be like late July. And we're going to be looking at the candidates who are running for Senate. We're like, none of these people have a snowball's chance in hell. We need to find a state rep from 8 years ago, and then we're just going to run them. They're going to raise 40 grand, and they're going to win the primary by like 10 points, and we're going to forget about them. That's what's going to happen.
I mean, it gives me vibes of when Mark Kirk was sort of like, is he going to run? Is he not going to run? And we had to wait around for a while because, with respect to Kirk, you had to give him that opportunity to make up his mind. But it does put the party in a tough spot. Again, there isn't a bench behind LaHood. It's LaHood or bust. I mean, Bost would be awesome, but he's not going to do it. Like there is only one candidate who gives us even the snowball's chance in hell here. So I guess it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, it would be nice to field at least a semi-competitive candidate here if Darren's not going to do it.
I also think that like Todd Ricketts could like make a play here.
People have been begging him to do it for what, years to run?
Right, but
we're talking governor.
Yeah. We're talking about things that are probably not going to happen. So we're talking about Darren LaHood. Let's shoot for the sky here. Even as a Chicago White Sox fan, the Ricketts family has some names. And while Cubs fans are always mad at them, despite the fact they put out a competitive product every year, but none of them watch the games anyway, so it doesn't matter. But the Ricketts family has weight in the game.
Yeah, you're right.
They could make a play. It'll never happen, of course, but they're wealthy. They can raise their own money. I think it could be interesting. Yeah. Will it happen? No, but I don't want to say that like Darren LaHood's the only possible candidate off the top of my head. It's not true.
Yeah, I just wrote off Ricketts because we've been praying at that altar for a very long time and it hasn't happened. So I've just kind of moved on.
Well, maybe there's like a former Cubs player or a Bears,
Everyone's always looking for
something that we can run. Just God forbid, not the White Sox.
I mean, listen. Well, we are professional losers, so that the White Sox players would fit right in with this Republican Party. But God, that is so hurtful to say.
Ozzie Guillen, come save us. Run for Illinois.
Ozzie would be awesome. God, that would be so much fun. Ozzie would be so much fun. Like I'd volunteer for that campaign. Huh?
I don't think Blago, can he run for this? Is that the only thing
that's the nightmare scenario. Remember, we talked about this a few months ago. That's the nightmare scenario is in such a weak field. If LaHood doesn't do it, Blago puts his name in here in the Republican primary. I don't know who beats him. And now that's one of our standard bearers statewide for all of 2026. I mean, that is the nightmare scenario here. And let's be real, it's not far-fetched. I mean, there's a reason why Blago's going all over him. He just had the conservative whatever event this week, taking photos with a bunch of people who said, we don't want Democrats in our party, and then they've got their arms around Blago. Like, okay, your intellectual dishonesty is killing me here. But, like, he's purposely keeping him out there. His political team, Vargas and others, the IR crew, like, they'd nudge him into this. They'd love it if he ran. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
It would be hilarious. It would be a lot of fun.
I mean, it would be yet another nail in the coffin of the Republican Party in the state.
Oh yeah, but like if we're going out, let's go out with a bang.
What a bang it would be! My goodness, I do want to talk about LaHood's press release and his statements. I mean, I will say this: part of the reason why LaHood would be such a good option here. I mean, his press release was like the messaging was on point. I know I'm a messaging guy. I get it. But that press release hitting on the issues and hitting them succinctly and in an effective way, going after Pritzker, like we haven't seen candidates of that quality in the state super frequently. And that's why LaHood, that plus he can raise money. He's a well-known name. He's a good campaigner. He's likable. But like, I just look at that press release and it's like, my God, if we had more Republicans who could message like that, who had campaign apparatuses like that, kudos to his team. They're doing their jobs. I mean, they're going to keep his profile up. They're going to raise his name ID. They're going to raise some money for him even if he doesn't run. They're definitely doing their jobs. But I really wish we had that level of talent and more campaigns throughout this state.
No doubt.
All right, did we cover everything here? Dave Nyack, we've talked about him a couple times. Illinois, Patrick Finkston, our buddy, reports that he's unlikely now to run for Senate. He's been laying the groundwork for that, so that is a little bit newsworthy. I mean, I don't know if that means he's unlikely to run at all, or if it means he's just unlikely to run for U.S. Senate. Obviously, he was taking grief for being a former Democrat, and a lot of people didn't like that. I said, we should embrace people like that, let them run. Didn't mean I was going to support him as a candidate. But we got to invite people into the party. I think it's interesting, though, if Finkston's right that he's not even going to run at this point. I mean, he at least would have a few bucks behind a campaign. Most of these other candidates are going to have, like Chris said, 40 grand to their name.
Well, what's he going to do? Run for governor or something instead? I mean, you lay all this groundwork, you're mailing letters out to precinct committeemen. I mean, you read the letters and you see some of the content. It's like, okay, this is like a pivot point for him, right? Where you could do one or the other. It was very kind of like generic attacking Dems. So I could see maybe he makes a play for governor instead because he thinks, well, Durbin's out, so I can't win. Which, I mean, I don't know. I think it's probably easier it would be easier to beat Juliana Stratton than it would be to beat Dick Durbin, right?
Yeah, if it is a pivot, I don't quite understand the reason for the pivot. I mean, I would imagine, again, we're waiting to see what Pritzker does. I feel like the governor's race is going to be almost, in some ways, tougher to win. If Pritzker's in, the governor's race won't be won at all. If Pritzker's out, again, you're going to go against somebody who's going to have millions and millions and millions of dollars. Whereas if you're a self-funder in the Senate race, that puts you at a huge advantage. I mean, other than LaHood, the only reason why Nyack had to be considered a serious candidate is he'd have the dough more than any other candidate. In a governor's race, when you can get past the caps and raise more money, his self-funding ability isn't as much of an advantage. So maybe it's a pivot, Michael. I don't know. Or maybe the blowback he was getting for the Democrat stuff was just so much that he said, fine, screw it. I don't know. Obviously, we'll find out. All right, let's move on. I mentioned we don't have to spend as much time on this because we've already gone a little longer than I wanted. But Jan Schakowsky, one of the worst kept secrets in politics, is she's going to finally announce her retirement in about a week and a half here. So aisle 9 is going to be a race that's going to be up. There's a couple of reasons why we got to talk about it. First, this is just indicative of what's going to happen to the Democratic Party, that they're going to have just seats flying. This one's open now. This one's closed. This person's running for that. Like, that's going to be happening here. And we'll talk about that next. But there's a couple of reasons why we got to talk about aisle 9. Let's just first talk about, like, if she doesn't run, who you guys hearing for that seat? I mean, certainly, obviously, there was already a candidate. I'm going to get this right. Kat Abigazala. I think I did it. I think I got it. She was already running. She raised a crap ton of money, almost 400 grand, I think it was, in this last quarter in just a couple of weeks. And a lot of Dems are unhappy. I mean, I will give credit to Kat Fax, even though they've been petty towards us. But they did report that some Democrats are frustrated because Schakowsky's taking too long to get out, while Kat is raising lots of money, which is going to cause problems for the party. I don't know, Chris, what are you hearing about aisle 9?
I mean, the one name that's always been thrown around is Daniel Biss. Everyone kind of just assumes he'd run in Schakowsky's absence because he already has an infrastructure. He ran for governor a few years ago. He's the mayor of Evanston, which is a big part of that district. Obviously, not most of it, but it's a big part of that district.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's a sizable part of that district. Very Democratic. A lot of people assume that the successor of Jan Schakowsky is going to be Jewish. I don't think that's the case necessarily. It historically has been the Jewish district. But it's kind of just moved out of just those Jewish neighborhoods.
Chris, we ran those numbers not that long ago. It was barely, like, what was it, 6% Jewish in that district? Maybe like 6.5%.
Right. So, but like, is it more Jewish than like the rest of the state? Well, maybe. But like, a lot of Jewish people live more so in like aisle 10 with Brad Schneider. But I do think that like most of the contenders are going to be Jewish. Like Deb Silverstein, she's the older woman from the 50th ward. Very much on the right side. By right, I mean left-right political dynamic.
But also right.
the right of the left-right political dynamic. She's on the right side of the Israel-Palestine split. Very much so. Like where she like is basically like a Republican on the issue.
Which in today's Democratic primaries, I mean, Kat's not going to be on that side.
No, definitely not. So she's a name I'd look out for. Kevin Olacaugh's a name. I've heard Kelly Cassidy, but Kelly Cassidy.
I don't see her doing it.
Like, dear God, no, please, no.
But she's always been more focused on Chicago. She's been toying with retirement. I just don't see her pulling the trigger on this.
But I mean, a lot of the names are like Chicago focused right now. People don't realize this district goes all the way to Algonquin now. So like, I mean, obviously, for the candidates probably from the Chicagoland area, but I think we need to look at like how big this district actually is now after this remap. and look at that. I do believe, despite the numbers, that the party's going to consolidate around a Jewish candidate. At least the
Maybe. I mean,
establishment will.
listen, as you said, I mean, Lane will bring it up on screen. Aisle 9 goes way out to McHenry County. I mean, in this remap, it's not the same district as it used to be. So it's going to be a very interesting race.
Well, I was gonna say, when Kat got in and she raised all this money in the first week or first, even first 24 hours really, and she was really using Jan as a punching bag, right? That she's not sufficiently, fighting for us, she's not pushing back enough on Trump, things like that. If it's 1v1 in that situation, I could see Kat pulling off kind of like an AOC kind of thing, upset an incumbent. But now that Jan's out and that punching bag is removed, wide open field. Kat doesn't have that infrastructure. She's kind of a no-name, really. I mean, people, other than the articles that have been written in the past month, like she was never on anybody's radar. So I think that's one of the.
Is it Michael? She's a lot like your girlfriend who ran for Congress like in Illinois, and then now she's down in Florida. What's her
Catalina
name?
Lau?
She's like Catalina Lau a little bit for the left.
Yeah, basically.
But I think, Michael, you're 100% right. I do think that her chances were much higher when it was a primary against Schakowsky. She wasn't going to win probably, but she had a shot in an open race. It does change the dynamics completely. Now, if it's a clown car of candidates in the Democratic primary, now she does still have a chance. But if Chris is right that the Democrats coalesce around somebody, they'll win handily in that primary. So it does change the game.
That's what I was going to say, Collin, is that this still does have the chance to become a clown car because as Democratic primaries, they become clown cars. If it becomes a clown car, I think you guys can't underestimate Kat because that, she's going to be able to raise money. That the fundraising infrastructure is there, and there are enough people like progressive young Democrats in that district. Plus, there's like even as you get further out west, there's actually more of a sizable Muslim population that starts picking up a little bit. So.
I mean, it's not insignificant. We ran those numbers. I mean, it was like what 5%, I think, in the district, or 4.5%. It was
almost as strong as the Jewish population.
Yeah, I mean, people miss that entirely. It's not insignificant in that district.
So it's not to say if this turns into a clown car, a 6-7 person race, don't write off Kat. If this is a 1v1, I think she would have done better versus Schakowsky. I disagree with Butler. I don't think she would have had a chance to win that. I think Jan would have pulled it off, but I think she would have been much closer to just Jan in a 1v1 than it's like Daniel Biss. Like. She's not going to beat Daniel Biss. It's not going to happen.
True. I mean, so here's the deal. Here's why we're talking about this. Not just because it's news. I get it. Aisle 9, our latest baseline tracker numbers here has Aisle 9 at D37. Trump lost it by 36. Like, this is not a race that Republicans are going to win. But you know what? Republicans are going to have to recruit someone. Why? Because there is somebody on the Republican side who's already announced in that race. I don't know how to say her name. Rocio. I don't want to screw it up, and no disrespect meant. Her last name's Cleveland. I will give her a chance to prove that she's not crazy, but so far her online profile is pretty nuts. And so if Republicans just sit back and let her become the nominee, we've run into this problem before where the media is going to put a microphone in front of her every chance they get because this is what all Republicans believe. This is what all Republicans look like. So unfortunately, even in a what did I say, 37 district, we're going to have to recruit somebody because otherwise we might end up with a nominee who's going to embarrass the party and drag other candidates down. So we can't ignore IL 9, even if it is a fool's errand in the general election.
I just think it's hilarious that you might have like a 2-3-way Republican primary in a D plus 30 something seat. Like,
but we're going to have to.
That's just so funny.
Didn't you hear the former candidates looking at running? Was it Seth Allen Cohen's looking at running again?
There's been whispers that like he might be looking at it again. His website is currently under like password, so that might mean he's trying to take it down, or it might mean that he's updating it for a new run. I don't know. I think he was a decent guy. Like he didn't seem to do anything that was wrong or anything. Ran an okay race. Nothing against him. So
at this point, you're looking for somebody who can help build the party infrastructure, who can carry our messaging, who isn't going to embarrass the party, who can do the best job they can. Any percent you get out of that district helps all Republicans. So you got to try your best for it. But what we can't let happen is just sit back and now we've got an Art Jones situation. Like you're going to have to do something.
I don't think it's as bad as the Art Jones situation. I think
it's not that bad, but dude, check out the social media profile. It's not the Nazi stuff, but there's plenty of other crazy stuff that we're going to have to answer for if we don't at least make sure there's a nominee there who isn't going to embarrass us.
I also want to say this also applies for like the second congressional district, which that's going to be if Robin Kelly is in fact running for Senate and is announcing next week, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch because when Bobby Rush retired, which is the district right next door, it was you want to talk clown car? That was the clown card end all clown cars column. So I'm expecting exactly the same thing to happen in the second congressional district because it's demographically almost identical. It just happens to go all the way down to Danville instead of going all the way down to Kankakee, Bradley Bourbonnais. But again, that's another fun one to look at. That's a lot more Republican area because it goes all the way down to Danville. So finding a decent candidate there. It's the last two cycles we've had halfway decent candidates in that district. So I don't think that the Republican Party will have anything to worry about there. But that
listen, D2, the baseline's D36, not D37. So it's 1 point better for us. So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, yes.
All right, let's go to our last topic before we shift over to our pre-recorded stuff. So, the all of this movement, the conversation right now is over who's going to run for what. Does that movement create opportunities for Republicans? As you've mentioned, I mean, a lot of these names we're talking about are congressional candidates. If Raja vacates IL8, I mean, that district is D10. I mean, it's still D10. It's still difficult, but it's not completely outside the realm of possibility. If Lord Underwood vacates IL14, that's a D5 district. Now that's certainly in play. If IL6 gets vacated, again, a D5 district, let's say Caston were to run for this or something statewide, there's opportunities here. There are definitely districts where, I mean, Trump only lost the 14th district by 5 points. He only lost the 6th district by 5 points. I mean, I know 2026 right now is not shaping up to be great for Republicans, but it's a long way away. You could certainly make a play for some of these districts if the incumbents were to vacate them. And that's just talking about the congressional races. What about state senators? What about state reps who decide to move up? This certainly is going to create openings for Republicans. Not all of them are going to be in playable seats, but some of them will. So what are you guys hearing about some of those races? And could this possibly open up the playing field a little bit for Republicans?
Well, I think it opens up opportunities in two ways. One, like you had just said, that if somebody vacates a seat that, is marginally in play and it's wide open, on both sides, okay, maybe there's an opportunity there that wasn't there before because we would have been running against an incumbent, right? And then I think the other opportunity is from a messaging perspective because the Democrats really have had it pretty easy since 2018, right? They haven't all the statewide ran for re-election for the most part, other than, Secretary of State, and that primary wasn't especially contentious. So if these Democrats get out and they've got, 4, 5, 6 people running for U.S. Senate and 3 people running in the 14th. And some of these districts, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to say stupid things. And, maybe that creates an opening in those specific races, or maybe it creates an opening elsewhere if you can tie, those candidates to others.
Well, it's tied to the split in the Democratic Party. We keep talking about it, but right now they're looking for, what's next as a party. And you've got, I mean, they're getting pulled in all sorts of different directions. And you're right. I mean, it's going to be a knockdown, drag out fight. Ask Sarah Feigenholtz about it in Senate District 6. I mean, you're going to see this in more and more districts, either people trying to move up or just, people's ambitions start going to come into play here where it's like, you know what? I'm running. What district do I live in? I mean, how many times do you guys see that, Michael and Chris? Where like so-and-so calls us and is like, I want to run for office. Okay, what district do you live in? I don't know, but I want to run for office. Like once ambition starts to come into play here, you're going to get lots of people who are like, well, then you know what? If so-and-so can run, so can I. Okay, well, you live in, I don't know, Harry Benton's district. Well, whatever, I'll run in that district then. Like you're going to see more and more of that as the opportunities open up. You're right, that Michael, you're totally right. They've been controlled for a while. This ambition didn't go away. It was building, it was building, it was building. 2026 is going to be the year of Democrats ripping each other apart in the primary. Can they come together after that? We're gonna find out. But especially if Pritzker vacates, if they don't have Big Daddy in his checkbook to make them come in line, you might see some of those hard feelings continue. So there certainly will be opportunities for many reasons.
I can see it now, Collin. We're going to take another week off from recording this podcast, and then the Pritzker video is going to drop.
Yeah, to everybody who's waiting for Pritzker to announce, you know what? Just send us a couple bucks because we're capitalists. Send us a couple bucks. We'll cancel SFR for that week, and he will announce that week, guaranteed.
I do not support bribes, nor do I take them.
We're not in elected office. It's not a bribe. It's called capitalism, man.
Disavow.
I know it's not my podcast or my agenda, but one interesting thing that I was thinking of is, okay, Juliana Stratton's out as lieutenant governor. She's running for U.S. Senate. It's already already announced. So, who does Pritzker pick and how quickly does he announce that? You think if when he announces that he's running for re-election, he's like, and this is my guy, or you
When?
think he
I mean,
wait?
it's an if, buddy. It's an if, not a when. Like,
Yeah,
Assuming
yeah,
I still don't think Pritzker's running. I mean, those people who are like Pritzker's going to run for Senate. I guess we should have talked about that early on. Like all those people who are saying Pritzker's going to run for Senate. You don't push your light gov over to that race and then F her over and get in the race yourself. Like Pritzker's top staff has all moved on. There's no signs here that A, Pritzker's running for Senate, and then
right.
B, that he's running again. Like I still put the money on Pritzker ain't running again, but I mean, it's possible.
I wonder if he's going to use. Let's assume he runs for re-election here for a moment. Um, let's assume that. What if he uses this as an opportunity to pull somebody out of one of these races? So, like hypothetically, and maybe nobody would do this. Maybe to like take light gov over Senate, but they might take. If you're a state rep, you might take light gov over Congress, and maybe you move that as a way to move up.
Yeah.
If you're a state senator, you might take light gov over Congress or even Senate. If you were looking at that position, it's an old tactic in politics to give somebody something to prevent them from running for something else. Be on the lookout for that. But I think, assuming humor the fact that Pritzker's running for re-election again, I think demographically it's going to meet the same profile strand. Younger woman, minority, doesn't have to be black, probably will be, but he might go as an Hispanic, certainly possible. I think that's really what it's going to look like
Yeah. Could be. I
for
mean, if you're looking at districts, though, here's the deal. Like, I've long advocated for IL6. I absolutely believe the right candidate can win IL6. But here's the reality. Just looking at these districts, I'm looking at our composite scores of these districts going back to 2016. IL6 was back in 2016. It was D2, D6, then D4, then D9. Trump lost it only by 5. It still kind of played like D9 in 2022, but then Trump didn't do horribly there in 2024. That district has, you can see the trend line is a little bit against us there. But if you look at IL 14, I've been saying this for a long time that IL 14 is not out of the realm of possibility for us. I mean, it was D6 back in 2016, and we're talking about the current makeup. So not the old maps. This district, this maps, we've run the numbers. It was D6 in 16. It was D9 in 18, only D4 in 2020, then back again to D6 in 2022. Trump lost it by 5. That trend line is actually either even or a little bit better for us over time. I think 14 is the one to look at. If Underwood's going to vacate that one, there is an opportunity for 14. We're going to need a good candidate. All respect to Jim Martyr. It's not going to be Jim Martyr who wins this district. We're going to need a solid candidate. If Underwood is out, that's a serious district. We can make a real plan.
I always need to remind our audience of the fact that the closest congressional race in Illinois in 2024 was the 6th. Nikki Conforti, despite not running, like she didn't run the same campaign that like Peacock did in 2022, but she was closer than Peacock was in 2022, which is interesting. I think a lot of that has to do with the Arab vote, because the Arab vote in aisle 6 was very much against Kasten, and they were actually pushing Conforti at the very end. And I think that's interesting. I think that could be a factor that plays into whether or not Republicans win that seat.
Yeah, it's true. And that district, the racial politics, too many people don't think about it. Thank God we got Chris here who always thinks about it, because they certainly come into play. All right. You guys good? Did we cover everything you guys wanted to hit?
I think so.
No, the papal conclave, Colin. Are we going to wait that for a special episode 2 weeks from now, where I get to have my own agenda?
You know what? I've been begging for a break here, especially after last week's marathon of an episode. So maybe we'll just have anarchy, just let Chris run an episode and just see just how much you burn down in 1 week.
Oh, it's going to be the most viewed episode of all time, Colin. You know it.
Yeah, I mean, for the wrong reasons, but hey, you know what? I get a week off, so I won't complain about it. I guess we'll have quick closing thoughts. I mean, Chris wants to talk to Papal Enclave. I want to talk the draft, but let's be real. We're recording this on Thursday. If people watch this on Friday, we're going to look like idiots, because the first round will have already happened. But it's in Green Bay, Chris, your region. I'm going to see some way that you guys all choke at the last minute, because that's what Green Bay does, is it chokes in the last minute. But do you think you guys can pull this draft off?
Probably not. Probably, but I guarantee you this, Colin. Despite anything Green Bay does, it's still gonna be better whenever the Bears are going to be doing tonight.
I mean, I hate that we're stuck at the 10th pick. I mean, it's like all the top players that are draftable that we want are all going to be off the board by 10. I think we go with the tight end just because it's the only blue chip player I think that'll be left by 10. But again, you guys are all going to be watching this Friday or later, so I'm probably going to look like an idiot. I mean, if the Bears don't trade their pick, we're just hoping somebody falls to us at number 10, which is not my favorite position to be in. I know. All right. Well, we're going to transition here to a recording we did at the Fulton County Republican Lincoln Day dinner. Thank you to them for having us out. We were out there, I don't know, what was it, like a month and a half ago at this point. We had a great discussion with some local lawmakers. Michael was there with me. Chris was too lazy to drive out, but Michael came up and joined us. We had a really good discussion, talked homeschool, talked Pritzker, talked Republicans. There was a lot of good things we covered. So if you were with us up till now, would love to have you stick around and join us for what was that discussion with the Fulton County Republican Party. In the meantime, we're not covering some of the other topics that I really wanted to get to. I had so many clowns this week, it was going to drive Chris nuts. I can only imagine how many clowns I'm going to have next week for our recording. So stick with us for that. In the meantime, enjoy our discussion with the Fulton County Republicans, and we'll catch you next week on the Smoke-Filled Room.
But the first thing I want to talk about is this. I went on a huge rant 2 weeks ago on our podcast because something became crystal clear to me. J.B. Pritzker just does not care about Illinois. Clearly, he is focused on his national ambition. 2 weeks ago, while he was on his big national media tour, tornadoes ripped through central Illinois. Where was J.B.? Nowhere. At that same time, reports came out that at DCFS, the agency that is supposed to be focused on our most vulnerable children in this state, over 1,000 kids have died since 2018, and they have not filed the mandated report that they're supposed to file. Under J.B. Pritzker's watch, let me say that again, over 1,000 of the most vulnerable children have died, and he doesn't care. So the first topic is just to anybody who'd like to cover it. What's JB's plan here, and is there clearly no longer just an interest in the state he's supposed to be governing?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear what his priorities are. I personally don't have any inside information. I don't think that he'll run for governor in 2026. I just would be surprised. You think about what his incentive structure is and why he would consider doing that. He wants to be the president so badly. After 2 terms as Illinois governor, we've seen what he's done. 9-month abortion, increased minimum wage, racked up our debt, spent a bunch more money on COVID. I mean, he can go down the liberal wish list and knock off everything that they want in a candidate. And if he stays around longer than 2026, now he's got to deal with his budget clip that he's given us. So in 2025, now we're looking at a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit. And so if I'm him, I'm thinking, holy smokes, I made this huge problem. I think I can get out of here really quickly. And then I got $3 billion. I'll go around the country and I'll sprinkle millions of dollars in all these early primary states and just become the liberal darling. A lot of people need to be the governor of their state or a senator in order to kind of be relevant. But a lot of people don't have $3 billion that they can use to go around and sprinkle things. So my guess is that he won't run. It's not a firm guess. It might be a 60-40 guess in my opinion. But I think his sights are set on other things. And I also think that's why we have such kind of mayhem in the Illinois legislature. It's because there's nobody herding the cats. The governor should kind of be doing that, and he's just not engaged.
Well, and I can say it, I don't want to get you guys in trouble, but it's well known that Chris Welch, the Speaker of the House, is not a strong leader. And so they've oftentimes looked to Don Harmon or looked to J.B. Pritzker, but with Pritzker vacant, it's an empty chair. So it's chaos, as you said.
Yeah, there's no question that Pritzker is too busy traveling around the United States and not paying any attention or very little attention to what's going on in the very state that he's the governor of. Chris Welch is way over his skis, and so everything is us looking at the Senate, and they're taking the lead on everything.
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned the governor's race. What's interesting, I was just having a conversation with my buddy over there talking about this, that what's going to happen, and I think people don't realize how much Pritzker and Durbin hate each other. So everyone's asking, like, why don't we hear an announcement? The problem is it's sort of like this game of musical chairs, because Durbin doesn't want to give Pritzker his seat and vice versa, because those two hate each other. So that's a lot of the dynamics going on behind the scenes as we watch the Democrats just sort of rip each other apart, and obviously as Republicans, we're kind of okay with that.
And that's what we'd like to sit back and see, is let them rip each other apart. The one thing the Republicans are kind of bad about, they kind of do that out in the open, but the Democrats will kind of do that behind the scenes, and we don't really know that they're kind of doing that, back behind the curtain.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's something there where we got to get better. Not attacking each other more in public. I don't know, Noreen, you've had to deal with that. I mean, what's driven me crazy is we've got conservatives attacking conservatives. Yeah. Against, at certain points, we're on the same team, and we're going to see over the next year, Democrats are going to rip each other apart as they try to figure out, because they're going more and more progressive. We're going to talk about that now.
Oh, yeah.
And they will come out.
Yep.
It will set back and get smarter about that, and will set back. That will come out.
Yep.
Well, I think one of the things that we've seen is that Pritzker and his administration has been like governing by press release, right? It's always about getting brownie points with MSNBC and CNN and, you know, trying to make a name for himself on the national stage. But each of us and, you know, all of you in this room, we feel the ramifications of that in our daily lives, right? The highest overall tax burden in the nation. We spent $1.6 billion on healthcare for non-citizens when we have people in this state that have lived here their entire lives that are struggling to get by, right? And all of that adds up, and now here we are with, you know, potentially a $3 billion budget deficit. And then, you know, day in and day out, you see it on the news, you see the bills that they're filing, where every day they're looking for another way to tax us more, right? Increasing, they're talking about, my state senator is talking about taxing us per mile driven. You've got, you know, they're trying to increase the cigar tax, which I know is something that is very personal.
Personal for me, let's be real.
By what, over 30%, right?
Man, any tax on my cigars is too much, let's be real.
So all of these things add up, and it's obvious that Pritzker is auditioning for, you know, the Democrat nomination for president and is not focused on the issues that we care about.
Well,
and
let's
that's a
talk
serious
about
problem.
Let's talk about the opportunity that's going to be available, because there was a piece done this last week. I won't call them out. Most of you know who I'm talking about. It was all doom and gloom. Republicans he used the word screwed for 2026. And I'm sitting here going, it's March of 2025. We're already waving the white flag in March of 2025, when frankly, the people I talk to say there's tremendous opportunity for Republicans in 2026. And one of the biggest reasons for that is just how progressive the Democrats in this state have become. Let me just, real quick as I introduce this, let me just read, in just the last, I think, 4 weeks, maybe 5, here's a bunch of the bills that Democrats in this state have pushed forward. They want to make child sex offenders be able to live closer to schools. They want to remove the training requirement for school officials on sexual violence and domestic violence. They want free abortions for non-citizens. They want to make contraception and abortion available on college campuses for college kids. They want to reduce the prison time by half for violent criminals who are currently in prison, including murderers. They want to legalize a tax on police officers. You could just say I was having a mental health episode, and now it's fine.
And which is funny, the actual word in the bill is attack. You could attack a police officer, but not firemen. So Senator Anderson's safe, but policemen need to be attacked.
They want to force pediatricians to ask your kids if you have guns in the house. They want to make sure, or they want to allow the state to invest in companies that are boycotting Israel. They want to outlaw private insurance. This is why the Democratic Party is polling at an all-time low. That's just the last 4 weeks. That's how crazy the Democrats in the state are. So I want to ask you guys, but does that create opportunity as you see down in Springfield just how progressive they've become? As you're traveling the state, and Michael, in your region, some of these quote-unquote moderate Democrats are putting these crazy bills forward. What do you see? What does that mean for us moving forward? Does it create opportunity?
I don't think there's any question that it creates opportunity for us. We see what goes on within the Democratic House caucus on a weekly basis, and it is nothing more than an absolute circus. When I said that Speaker Welch is way over his skis, he has 9 caucuses within his one caucus. So he has a Hispanic caucus, he has a black caucus, he has a moderate caucus, he has a progressive caucus that is growing by leaps and bounds. And most of the ridiculous ideas that are coming forward are coming from that faction of their progressives. And the moderates are the ones that are conversing with us saying,
these people are crazy.
These people are crazy. We don't know what to do. Unfortunately, we had a member of the Democrat caucus that just threw his hands up and said, I'm done. I'm too moderate. I'm not going to deal with these crazies any longer. That's not the answer either. I mean, if it's an area of the state that elects a Democrat time after time after time, could you please find a moderate for us?
Yep.
Because this is nuts.
It's basically the theater of the absurd.
Yes.
And there's a new act every day.
Yeah.
So it's hard to keep up with how crazy it's getting. And so it's hard for you all to keep up with it. And like you say, these Democrats who are really moderate or more conservative. So we're all out here watching, and it's hard to keep up with exactly what's happening at the state level, at the national level, and that's exactly what it is. So really, before we do these knee-jerk reactions, we need to watch what's going on around us for all of these things. We need to listen. We need to think about it. And then we need to respond or act, because we want to make rational decisions. We don't want to act just like these folks are doing.
Well, part of the job here is to call out what they're doing. I mean, we want to make sure you guys are
call it out
aware,
proper.
because the more that the average Illinois voter knows just how crazy the left is, they're going to be more open to Republicans and Republican ideas, because they're going to realize, wait a second, Republicans aren't what the media told me you are. You guys are actually the more normal party. Interesting.
Yes, we want to come at it with truth, because that's a commodity that seems to be, pretty far removed these days.
Yeah.
But and Travis, I know you've worked to highlight just how good the good that's in the world, and I love that about you.
Yeah, thanks. And I think one part of that is reminding folks that we can do this. This is kind of a dirty little secret that I think the Dems would like us to have short memories on. But the last governor in Illinois was a Republican. The most recent United States senator we had in Illinois was a Republican. President Trump lost by 9 points in Illinois. Senator Bailey lost to Governor Pritzker by 9 points in Illinois. We're talking single digits. We are in this game. And the amount of money that Governor Pritzker has had to spend to control that seat is frankly disgraceful. We all know that they really meddled in the Republican primary to try to pick who our person was going to be. Governor Pritzker spent $40 million in the Republican primary. He spent $350 million in the Democrat primary. He spent $40 million in the Republican primary. Just to give you a sense for the magnitude of that, Pennsylvania, another large state, about as many population as Illinois, $40 million would have been the most expensive gubernatorial campaign in Pennsylvania history. And that's how much Governor Pritzker spent in the Republican primary. So that shows you how afraid they are that we can win, that they're spending money in our primary because they know that if we get a good candidate with great talking points, that's solid on the issues, that has a strong background, he's incredibly beatable, to the tune of he's going to spend $350 million of his inherited family money that he didn't earn to try to hold that seat.
Well, and I think, obviously, if you're in this room tonight, you're probably one of some of the most informed people in Fulton County, and probably close to some of the most informed people in this state. And, I live in the 12th Congressional District. Congressman Bost is my congressman. In 2014, we flipped that district, and that's Rhonda's congressman as well. And that was the first time that seat had been held by a Republican in over 70 years. So that was a big deal when we flipped that. And one of the things that Mike Bost always says is that you have to be looking for opportunities to talk to your neighbors and your friends and your family members about what's going on in this state and in this country. And it's all about coffee shop, barber shop, beauty shop, right? People that go to those places, you talk to them, they talk to their friends, that spreads. And yeah, the Democrats are going to outspend us 5-1, right? But if you talk to your people at your church, or when you're at in the barber shop or at the coffee shop, that outweighs a lot of that, because those are personal relationships. And when you're talking to your friends and your family and your neighbors about the issues that we're facing, that outweighs, the 10 mailers they're going to get in 1 week from, the dirty Dems.
Do we have any precinct committeemen in the room? Can we just give a round of applause for these folks? This is not hyperbole. The precinct committeeman is the backbone of the Republican Party, and the precinct committeeman is how we start winning again. Because when you can be in a neighborhood, thank you. You can give a round of applause for that, please. Because thank you.
I want you. It was like Jeb Bush saying, "You can clap."
Yeah, exclamation point. When you live in a neighborhood and you can say, hey, I'm your neighbor down the street, I'm voting for Michael Butler for state representative because of these issues, would you consider supporting him? That is so much more powerful than getting your 12th mail piece in your mailbox this cycle. And so you guys, we don't have a gazillionaire, a spoon-fed governor who's going to fund all of our races for us. We got to go out and win them on our own. But the good news is hard work is part of the Republican Party platform. So seriously, thank you all so much for being PCs.
So I'm going to give you something that's going to hearten sort of, I mean, I'll be real. So at the end of 2022, when we had a rough election, I had a bit of a crisis of confidence, and I paid to do a significant study of the state of Illinois. And we dove deep into the voters in the state because I wanted to know, am I wasting my time? You know, thank God we get to do politics outside of Illinois because y'all are a little frustrating sometimes in this state. So that keeps me grounded a little bit. But in Illinois, I was like, should I just stop, just work in 49 other states? So we did a research, and this is crazy. I was shocked by this. With Illinois being a deep blue state, when the data came back and we asked voters, how do you identify yourself? I just assumed they would say liberal first because we're a deep blue state. That's what we keep being told. And yet the number one response was moderate, not liberal. The number two response wasn't even liberal, it was conservative. The number three response was liberal. That's the voters of this state. They are working class, real human beings. They've been spoon-fed a load of garbage for a long time, which is why currently too many of them vote Democrat. But this isn't a situation where you have to go convince a far-left progressive to vote Republican. That's probably not going to happen. The average voter of this state is center to center-right. Those are people we can reach. And one of the best ways we can do it, I want to take us to our next topic. One of the best ways we can do that is covering the issues they care about. And right now, that's cost of living, that's pocketbook issues, that is the things that affect their daily lives. And so that's our next topic here, is how Democrats claim in their TV ads and their mail pieces that they're lowering taxes and lowering your cost of living. But I want to do this again. I want to call up the bills I've seen in the last 4 to 5 weeks, or just the news that I've seen in the last 4 to 5 weeks about how Democrats are raising your cost of living. They want to make it so, as Michael said, they could add a mileage tax on top of your gas taxes and your tolls. They want to allow municipalities to be able to add yet another gas tax, and counties. They want to push to expand the sales tax in Illinois to all services. They've filed a number of bills that will raise health insurance rates for every middle-class family. They're pushing to increase energy costs throughout the state with multiple bills. They are pushing to raise auto insurance rates. They're trying to raise car rental prices. They're raising fees on businesses. And as Michael said, we now pay the highest combined state and local taxes in the nation. And oh, by the way, we have fewer private sector jobs today than we did in 2019. That's the J.B. Pritzker record in the state. Democrats are raising the cost of living for working families, and that has to be a big narrative, because when you tell your neighbors that the reason why they can't afford to live in the state is because of Democrat policies, that gets their attention when we have Republicans who are working hard to lower their cost of living.
So, Michael, I'll go to your backyard, if you will, in Cook County, and our daughter lives in Chicago, and before this past election, she was watching the early voting, and she would, on a drive, she would drive by this polling place and that polling place, and she'd call and say, I'm really a little nervous. The lines are huge. And she said, I can't figure this out. I've never seen this. And she said, now, I will say there's a lot more young people than I've ever seen before. Well, I think that even Cook County is beginning to see the light. And I think it's because of a number of reasons. One of them is, of course, the free health care and free benefits for the illegal immigrants in the state. And the folks that have lived in the city of Chicago and on the south side that have been doing without and going without year after year after year, they saw this happen, and they're done. They are done. We have seen that an uprising of Turn Chicago Red, and God bless them. And they are on the move, and I think they are going to get it done. And I am very encouraged by that. Now, are we going to turn them all red? No, we're not going to do that. But I think that the light bulbs have gone on in the heads of a lot of these people, and they are beginning to say, well, wait a minute. These policies that I thought were great, these things that I thought were going to help my family, they never came true. So I'm done.
Yeah, well, and Chris, our other panelist who's usually on our podcast, likes to say, you can talk about free abortions and all the other things you want to talk about until you can't afford groceries.
Right.
Then suddenly you don't care about all the rest of that
Right.
stuff.
Exactly.
And that's the reality we're in. You know, we just did a poll in Illinois, and we asked people, can you afford to stay in this state? I'm going to tell you, only 20% of the voters in the state said it's affordable to live in Illinois. Only 5% said it was very affordable. Meanwhile, every demographic said it was way too expensive to live in the state. And when I say every demographic, I don't just mean conservatives and Republicans. Let me give you a couple of these. You guys know how net works in polling? You take the positive, you subtract the negative. That final number is your net number. That's how that works. So when I say a number is net negative, that means more people say they can't afford. So let me give you some crazy numbers here. Hispanics say by negative 51% say they can't afford to live in the state. Even blacks at negative 14, Asians at negative 17, liberals negative 28, Democrats negative 21. Even liberals and Democrats are saying they can't afford to live here. That's a problem for Pritzker and the Democrats.
Who turns the lights out when they're all gone?
And it's Bruce Rauner's fault line is starting to get a little long in the tooth. I mean, we're 6 years into J.B. Pritzker. When he took over, our state budget $34 billion. This year we're looking at a state budget $56 billion. I mean, you just got to take a step back and think, we're spending all this money, and what do we have to show for it? Not much. And I think that's another thing that probably puts pressure on him for a third term is you can't keep blaming Bruce Rauner when it's your third term that you're going for.
Well, with everything going wrong within his administration, at a certain point, even the media starts to turn. There's a liberal blog out there, I won't give them free press, but even that blog has started to ding Pritzker a lot more recently than he was ever willing to do. If basically his spokesperson, the leader of that blog, is starting to call him out, you know they're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then what have we got? The southern end of the state, how many counties have we got? Indiana's courting them, and they want to go to Indiana. So I don't know. I don't think that's probably very logical.
That same poll that I talked about, Rhonda, we asked people, do you want to live here anymore? 52% said that they were likely to leave. Think about that. You're walking down the street, more than 1 out of every 2 people you see is like, yeah, at some point, I'm getting the heck out of here. Like that's not a sustainable situation.
No, it's not. It's not.
But for those that are here with us tonight and those that are involved in agriculture and agribusiness, you can't leave. You are married and mortgaged to your land. And so, first of all, I thank you for what you do and the fact that you don't have a choice.
It's like that old commercial, we'd rather fight than switch, isn't that right? So we're here.
Let's talk about the budget deficit. I know you guys brought up that Pritzker and the Democrats right now are facing a huge budget deficit that they created with the massive overspending, as Travis pointed out. And so I want to start with our legislators on this one officially here. Just what's going to happen here is we're going into the throes of those budget discussions, which, by the way, Republicans are completely shut out of because they like to claim bipartisanship while they don't even let you in the room. But how are they going to fill this deficit when already we're seeing that the transit agencies want their almost $1 billion. You've got all the bills they want to pass that will increase spending even more. This deficit's going to keep growing. They want to claim no new taxes, but that's just not going to be possible.
So I'll start with the transit situation, and that deals with the city of Chicago and the suburbs. And they have currently right now about $780 million deficit for their transit system. They are going to have to fill that hole somehow. There are a group of legislators that are meeting. Even though we have a number of legislators that represent Cook County and the suburban areas, none of those members have been asked to the table to the discussion. Shocking, absolutely shocking. But I will tell you, one of the ideas that they're throwing around is to increase the cost for the ridership, $3, which they have not increased the cost of the ridership for decades, or at least a decade. That would go to fill the hole in their transit budget, but that would also be borne by the folks that live in the suburbs that don't have access to most of the services. That's a fight I can't wait to sit back and watch. I hope to God to have the popcorn for that one.
Well, because you've got every suburban mayor, every suburban elected will fight that. Because basically what's happening is this is a Chicago takeover of the transit system. They want all the suburban taxpayers to cover, because they've got hundreds of millions of dollars of debt they need paid off, if not billions, I believe, but I don't have the number on the top of my head. So they want control, but they want us all to pay that bill.
And they want control when they have this deficit because of mismanagement. So we should let them go ahead and manage it because they've done a terrible job to this point, which makes absolutely no sense. When we talk about the state budget, that is that is going to be a very interesting dynamic to watch. I will say that at this point in time, as the chief budgeteer for the House Republican caucus, we have had a couple of very cordial meetings, nothing of any substance whatsoever. I am a firm believer, and I said this a little bit earlier, Senator Harmon was the only grown-up in the room last year. I firmly believe that Chris Welch, our speaker, will be cut out of the budget talks. I think the governor will be part of it up to a point, but he wants to certainly rein in spending because he's running for higher office. And so he doesn't want a huge debt on or more tax increases on his watch. But they have a serious budget deficit. Travis mentioned we went from a $34 billion budget to a $55 billion budget, but in the blink of an eye. And it's still not enough money. We are operating at a $500 million deficit this year. We are looking at more than $1.5 billion deficit for next year. And so how they figure this out, are they going to be cordial and in agreement to cutting the $1.6 billion benefits for illegal immigrants? I don't think so. I know for a fact that there are members of our House that are looking, Democrat members of the Illinois House, that are looking for ways to pay for that because they want it to continue. So when you even give them something on a silver platter, how you can save $1.6 billion, they're not having any of it.
Well, and when you talk about the audit related to that, so there was an audit of this program, and you guys are not going to believe this. It's $1.6 billion to illegal immigrants, rife with fraud. Who'd have thunk? It's like the biggest shock that I've had since I've been down there.
Your shock face.
So
is
this is my shock face. So thousands of people with Social Security numbers reaping benefits. They're citizens. They're not supposed to be on this program. Thousands of people not over the age of 65 in the wrong program, not supposed to be receiving it. Thousands of people receiving money in both programs to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse from this one government program. To me, that is clear opportunity to say, we're shutting it down.
And it was only 2 years ago?
And in 2 years they did this. And I don't know if waste, fraud, and abuse is not a reason to say, we're shutting it down immediately. Maybe the governor can say, we'll think about bringing it back, but you gotta shut it down when it's being abused to that effect. And instead he said, well, maybe I'll take a piece of it out of our next budget. I mean, to me, that is just such a layup, and they're not even grabbing it.
Well, you think, like, you look at, we saw those reports of state employees that were committing PPP fraud during the pandemic. You have unemployment fraud. You've got people that were not eligible for these state-funded healthcare benefits that were receiving it. You've got IDNR. I don't know if you guys saw this, but IDNR was audited by the feds, and the feds came back and said that if they don't clean their act up on some of these federal grants that the Department of Interior was giving the state of Illinois, that we're not going to be eligible for those grants moving forward.
So let me just make sure you guys are aware. I want you to continue, but let me just make sure you guys are aware of what that is. Because when J.B. Pritzker says that they care about Illinois, that what Michael just talked about with IDNR, there were grants given to us by the federal government, but the state of Illinois is so mismanaged under J.B. Pritzker that we didn't spend the money. We had federal cash sitting there, but because Pritzker is an absent governor and there's no leadership in any of his departments, there was federal money available to this administration. They failed to spend it on behalf of Illinoisans. And so now the feds are like, well, we're just going to stop giving you money then if you can't handle your own house. That's what Michael was just talking about. That's how crazy it is.
Well, and I think also if you think back over the course of the last 4-6 years, there were two really big opportunities for J.B. Pritzker and the Democrats to get our financial house in order. So in the first 2 years of the Trump administration, the economy was firing on all cylinders, and Illinois brought in a record on tax revenue, right? So you'd think, oh, we've got this record on tax revenue, all this money that we didn't expect, thanks to President Trump. Right. But that J.B. Pritzker and the Democrats aren't going to give him even an ounce of credit for that. But instead of spending that money to pay down some of our debt, fix the pension issue, they just said, well, we'll just expand the existing programs, right? So they just increased spending. And then during COVID, we were getting all this money from the feds. And what did they do? Increase spending. So instead of fixing the problems and trying to address some of these issues, they're like, hey, we'll figure that out later. Let's just, increase what we're already doing. And here we are.
Well, that bill is going to come due. And that's what you talked about, is that bill is coming due fast with this overspending. You can only buy votes for so long before somebody comes and says, okay, now you owe. And that's why a lot of us think Pritzker is going to get the heck out of town, because that bill's coming due. And then we've got the responsible leaders left who can maybe get us out of this mess. Let's go to our next topic here. And Rhonda, I'm going to start with you since I keep missing you on these topics. But let's talk about this, because there's been a big push. Democrats are essentially taking away parental rights by trying to, they say, regulate homeschoolers, but in reality, they're trying to shut down homeschooling. They don't want you to have control over the education your kids get. They want to control that as the state. It has lit homeschoolers on fire. Over 50,000 witness slips, I think, were filed on this, maybe even more than that. It's crazy to see and awesome to see this groundswell of people coming and saying, wait a second. The state is not responsible for my kid's education. I am, and you're not going to step in. How cool has that been to see that groundswell?
Oh, it's been awesome to see everybody coalesce around that. Yeah. So, we were all passing around, signing witness slips and seeing everybody there at the Capitol and all of those things. So everybody just getting behind our families and everybody coalescing around that. So watching that on the news, and seeing everybody just getting around the family, which is what's important, so.
And sometimes these issues pop up. You have a great plan, you know what you're going to do strategically, and then your opponent is something dumb, and kudos to the House Republicans. I know, Travis, you've been helping lead on this as well, to say, you know what? Thank you for this gift, let's go. And you guys stepped up and started fighting on that.
Yeah, it is a gift. Let's give them a round of applause.
It's been an honor, really, to lead on the homeschool issue. I've got 5 nieces and nephews that are homeschooled, and y'all, these kids can recite the Gettysburg Address. They can name all 47 presidents. One of those guys gets named twice in there. And they recite Bible verses. They're just amazing kids. They're absolutely crushing it. I know Senator Anderson was here earlier, had to step out. And first of all, many of you know Senator Anderson. He's a senator over this area. Really strong Second Amendment guy, really strong pro-life guy. And him and his wife homeschool, and he likes to tell the story that his wife is the teacher, but he's the principal. Yeah. And they just have had a wonderful homeschooling experience. Actually, homeschooling is an area where Illinois shines. It's really a bright spot that we have. And since the COVID-19 pandemic, homeschooling in Illinois has really ticked up quite a bit. A lot of parents saw what was getting taught in public schools and said, I'm going to homeschool. And actually, so the number one kind of leader on this bill, her name's Tara Costa Howard, and her number 2 person, a woman named Michelle Mussman, and she said, well, homeschooling has grown so much in Illinois, so of course we have to start regulating it. And gosh, isn't that just like a politician to say, like, we're growing, let's start getting the government involved to get the government's hands on it. But actually, this is a bit of an aside. I want to share a story about one homeschooler named Thomas Edison. So Thomas Edison went to public school, and one day came home with a note from his teacher. And the teacher said, now, little Thomas, don't read this, just hand it to your mom. He gets home, hands his mom the note, and he says, Mom, what does the note say? And she said, Thomas, this note says that you're too smart for that school, and you're too good of a little boy, and that the teachers aren't prepared to handle you because you're so smart, and so we're going to start teaching you at home now. Thomas Edison's mother passes away several decades later. He finds that note in her drawer. The note said, Mrs. Edison, your son is addled. He does not belong in this school. He's not smart enough to learn here. Please take care of him. So Thomas Edison's mom absolutely changed his life by homeschooling him. And this is a guy who's
perhaps the smartest man ever, probably the most gifted inventor we've had in the United States of America, light bulb, phonograph, founder of General Electric. And it just, to me, it almost brings a tear to my eye to tell the story, because our homeschool kids can seriously fly. And so can our public school kids, so can our private school kids. It's not a knock about them. But when you're homeschooled, like Thomas Edison was, you have an opportunity to learn in a unique, tailored environment specifically for that kid and their learning needs. Some of these homeschool kids have challenging learning needs, and it enables mom and them to really give them the best possible education that they can get. So in Illinois, we've got to defend our homeschool families. We have to defend mom and dad's right to raise their kids in the environment where they believe is the best opportunity for them to excel. And for many, homeschooling is that. And we got to say, government, keep your hands off. We are crushing it with homeschools. Let us do it.
Well, the amazing thing is we got a chance to be part of the elections, if you'll remember, in Virginia, that basically flipped Republican just on parental rights. This is the kind of thing that could swing a whole election.
Oh, yeah.
Because people, when parents realized, like during COVID, when parents even in the suburbs realized that suddenly what they saw was happening with their kids, because it was a wake-up call to be involved with your kids' education, and they saw the books that were being read to the kids in the libraries and what was being taught to the kids, parents were like, wait a second. And you had Democratic families who had never voted Republican in their lives who voted Republican during COVID. We saw it. And so you can see the same dynamic here with this homeschooling, where when people realize that Democrats just want control and want your kids to learn their approved curriculum, which, by the way, their approved curriculum is teaching your third grade kids something you wouldn't even teach your high school kid.
Yeah,
it wakes a parent up for sure.
Well, I think that, it shows how out of touch the Democrats are, right? We've seen the headlines and, probably some of us have experienced it firsthand. There's inappropriate content in our public libraries and at our schools. You look at the statistics, especially like in the Chicagoland area, where they're graduating kids that aren't proficient in reading. They can't read at grade level. They can't do math at grade level, right? So you have parents that are looking for alternatives. They want to send their kid to a private school, or they want to homeschool because they know that that's going to be a better education than what they're going to get from the public school system. But these Democrats in Springfield, they, instead of addressing those issues and saying, hey, maybe we need to, adjust the curriculum. Maybe we need to make sure that these students can read at grade level and do math at grade level and fix those problems. They're trying to paperwork homeschooling families to death to get them back into the public school. Oh, we'll just, instead of addressing the issues that parents are concerned about, they want to make these parents jump through all these hoops or make it impossible for them to ensure that their kids are getting a better education. I guess my only option is to send my kid to a failing public school. It's insane.
Well, and I love to see, as Democrats like to claim that we Republicans hate teachers, the Republicans have done a great job putting through bills that support teachers, that invest in teachers in the state. And we're pushing against that narrative that, no, this isn't anti-school, anti-teacher. This is pro-kid and pro-family rights, parental rights.
Right.
And we're doing a great job at defining that so that the left can't just be like, oh, you just hate teachers.
Yeah. Well, I think we've seen with over 51,000 witness slips signed and the thousands of people that showed up at the Capitol to voice their opposition to this homeschooling bill. This was the first time I have ever seen they had to literally shut the doors of the Capitol down.
It's a big building.
It's a big building. The Capitol could not house any more people. They had to shut it down. It was absolutely awesome. It was awesome. And to see these families and the respect that these kids have is, it is just incredible. And I firmly believe, and Travis, you can disagree, I don't think you will, but I think it's made a difference. I think that this show of support for homeschooling has really changed the mind of some of our Democrat colleagues. There's not a Republican that is in support of this bill. It was my understanding that they had the number that they needed to pass it, but I think that those numbers are dwindling, and I'm encouraged.
And the nice thing about homeschool families is that they exist in every single representative's district. It's not like it's one of these downstate issues like ag or things that are really only kind of more prominent in our districts. Every single representative has families that they've heard from in their district who are against it, and that makes it a powerful issue that it's not just us down here screaming and shouting, it's everybody.
Well, I think one of the best things here, you always got to smile when your opponent makes a mistake. The crafters of this bill made a big mistake by tying in private schools, religious schools into it. And so now it's not just the homeschoolers that are angry about it. Any family that sends their kid to a private school or a religious school, now they get involved too. And so again, they made major missteps. This whole process was every 5 years or so in the state, Democrats are dumb enough to try to like jump into this homeschool pot, and they just did it again. And
to be clear, they're always dumb. Every 5.
I've just been doing this long enough. This is the third time I've seen it because the gray in my beard's not fake anymore. And it's just when they make these mistakes, you jump, and it really is angering families, and rightfully so. We just need to capitalize on it, and we got to keep that anger not just today, but all the way through November of next year. That's the key here.
Yeah.
Charge it right on through. It's a unifying issue. Everybody loves their kids, and they want to see them get the best education they can, whether that's home or in a public school. I think you'll see the public schools start stepping it up now too, because they're not going to want to lose all those kids. They need them for all kinds of programs and things like that. And so it's really telling, and it pulls back the curtain on the public schools as well.
True.
So,
well, listen, small class size really helps, whether it's in a private school. I went to a private school.
Yeah.
I was valedictorian in my class. It sounds impressive until you realize there were 7 people in my class.
there you go.
So you leave that second part out, and then I sound really smart. All right, let's go to our next topic here. Let's talk gerrymandering, because Democrats in the state don't just want to win, they like to cheat to win. So they like to pick their voters. It's been widely reported that the maps in this state are the most gerrymandered in the country, and frankly illegal, and I know the Republicans are fighting it in court. We'll see where that goes. It's a worthwhile fight to have for sure. Really, this topic is just about what do we need to do about this, especially looking to 2030. The next remap is coming. And so what do we do about the current illegal maps? And I know you guys are fighting that, but for the people in the room, what can they do as we look towards the next remap in 2030 and 2032?
Well, I certainly would say that the last thing you should do is sit back and let it happen. I think that has been the case in too many remap years, and certainly this remap, and I've seen a few of them, this remap is like none I have. You couldn't even make this map up if you tried. This is the worst gerrymandering across the entire United States. And it was done by the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats. And they were at it for 2 weeks. And they came up with some of the most insane districts I have ever seen. Now, they've challenged it in court. We've challenged it in court. The House Republicans have. We'll see how far it goes. We are very hopeful, but we are also not naive, because we know what the makeup is of the Illinois Supreme Court. But going forward, we had some folks. There was a group of black folks that were in on the original lawsuit against it, and some of
the Latino organizations, Hispanic
organizations. But at the end of the day, our voices were silenced. But we can't let that continue to happen. We have to have more partners when we're fighting a map. And I think that brings more attention to it. And we have to insist that maps are fair. And how do you get a fair map? You give it to an independent source to draw the maps. That's the only way you're going to get a fair map in the state of Illinois.
Well, the political reality is that as the people who are leaving are disproportionately black. It's black families who are leaving more than anyone else in Illinois. And so while this last map was drawn, you have a lot of power consolidated in the black caucus down in Springfield who said, we're not losing districts.
Right.
And so the reality is that Hispanic voters in the state got disenfranchised, Asian voters in the state got disenfranchised because they weren't going to reduce the number of black districts, especially not in the middle of, all the racial unrest that was going on at the time. And so the reality is that when they talk about this map being, fair racially, and they like to use it as their excuse, it's an absolute lie. And so as you said, we've got to get those partners with us, because as we do our polling around the country and in Illinois, the number one demographic that is showing over and over they are willing to support conservative values and vote Republican is Hispanics.
Yep.
More and more and more we are seeing that they are leaving the Democratic Party and coming towards us. And so as we look to the very near future with the next remap, I've got to imagine this dynamic is going to increase even more. And there are natural allies for us in Hispanics who are family-based, hard workers, entrepreneurs. I mean, they are Republicans, they just don't know it yet. Yeah. I think if we do that hard work in the coming years, this could have a massive electoral shift and advantage towards us.
Well, I live in St. Clair County, and, East St. Louis is part of that. So as you can imagine, they gerrymandered the heck out of us, right? We sent 9 legislators to Springfield between the House and the Senate, and we're a county of 250,000 people, right? So kind of crazy. But, in 2019, we were sending 3 Republicans to Springfield, and the Democrats were sending 6 Democrats to Springfield. In 2022, we flipped the state rep seat. In 2020, we flipped the state rep seat. And then in 2022, we flipped a state rep seat and a state Senate seat. So now we're sending 6 Republicans to Springfield. The Democrats are sending 3, right? So I know it's aggravating, and you look at these maps and you think, what the heck are we going to do? There's no path forward here. But you got to get it out there and put in the work and knock the doors and recruit good candidates, and you can make a difference. And I know, Travis, you've been down and you knocked doors with Kevin Schmidt, and he's my state rep. That was a seat that we flipped. We flipped that in 2022, and then in 2024 we won by 5 points, right? So we have a white German Republican from Millstadt, Illinois, that is representing East St. Louis and the state legislature, and that's a big deal. And the people in East St. Louis know that when they call Kevin Schmidt, that he's going to answer the phone, and that's why he got up to 6% of the vote in East St. Louis, 383 votes. Which, you think that's like, oh man, 383, 6%. But for East St. Louis, that's a major accomplishment.
Yeah. And I think part of the question was, so what are we going to do to kind of win back Illinois? And a big thing I'm working on is, I call it Make Central Illinois Florida. And what I mean by that is, you've got this country with craziness going all around it, but you have these pockets in Florida and Tennessee and Texas where they do things the right way and they can be prosperous. Illinois, we've got craziness going on all around us, but you can have a pocket right here in Central Illinois where we win county board seats, we win city council seats, and we can really make this a bastion of success. And so Fulton County's done it. Fulton County used to be blue because of guys like John Spangler, now it's red. Knox County used to be blue because of guys like Scott Erickson, now it's red. Guys like Ryan Frederick, now it's red. Tazewell County used to be blue, now it's red. Yeah. Peoria County, we're down 2 county board members. We can make that a red county. I just spent today knocking on doors for one of our city council candidates that's coming up on Tuesday. So we can really make this an area where we're turning it around, and then hopefully we get to a point down the road and you look at a graph and it's like, why is population growing around Peoria? Why is the economy growing around this area? Oh, well, because conservative values work. When you enact personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility, business-friendly taxes and regulation, and leading with a moral compass, it's worked every time in world history. When you do those things, economies thrive and families thrive. And that's what we need to prove here in this region. That is the antidote for Illinois.
Yeah. Travis, I will make this pledge on the record that if you make Central Illinois, Florida, including the good weather, I will move down to Central Illinois.
No hurricanes, not the bad weather, not this.
Hot trees, please.
All right, so my producer is texting me, and my drink as an Irishman is almost empty. So one more topic, and we're going to stop. But let's have a little fun here. We're all political inherently. let's talk about some of these races, 2026. We had a governor candidate come here and rile up the crowd, give a great speech. We had a great candidate for Congress here for the 17th, and we're going to flip that seat. We've got candidates now announcing. So let's talk about 2026. What's this look like? Have some fun with it. There's going to be 7 constitutional offices up on the ballot, all 6 for the state of Illinois, and a Senate seat. We don't know what Durbin's going to do. We don't know what Pritzker's going to do. I don't know. Have some fun with it. Pass on your favorite rumor. What do you guys think is going to happen here in 2026?
I heard Michael Butler's running for governor.
Oh, look at that.
I'm not old enough.
Sponsor Chick-fil-A for everybody. That's the way he'll win. What do you think? I mean, is Pritzker going to run, or for what? Is Durbin going to run again? What do you guys think? This is all fun. None of this is based in fact. We're just guessing, but go ahead.
I don't think that Durbin is going to run again. And I mean, you see all these Democrats, Raja, Krista Manuth, or how do you say
that? But it was good.
Is that close?
We don't ask Michael from Southern Illinois to pronounce Indian names, so it's all right.
I'm a redneck from Hamilton County, so pronunciation is not my strong suit. But he's been down in Southern Illinois, meeting with elected officials and SIU Carbondale Law School. So I think that there's a chance that he throws his hat into the ring. We've already seen Juliana Stratton, the lieutenant governor. She said that if Durbin doesn't run, that Pritzker's already told her that he would support her. I saw today that Sean Casten, he's going to be going to Republican congressional
Thunder, where did you see that? I mean, come on, give credit where it's due. I pointed it out.
So he's going to be traveling around the state here in the coming days as well. So I think that there's going to be a pretty nasty primary on the Democratic side for U.S. Senate, which obviously kind of opens up the door for us as Republicans, depending on how crazy they get. So I think that that's going to be one to watch.
Well, you think about, you got to realize if you're a member of Congress, if you want to run for another office, because you're up every 2 years, you have to give up your seat. So if Sean Casten or Lauren Underwood or any of these other members of Congress in what are essentially swing districts, if they step out, I mean, Casten's 6th district is absolutely winnable.
Sean Casten's district was the closest congressional district in the state this last cycle.
If Underwood decides she's going to vacate the 14th, suddenly that race is much more in play. I mean, that's where as the Democrats go chasing their ambition, it creates absolute opportunities for Republicans. What do you think, Rhonda?
Well, Travis, what are you wanting to run for?
I'm very happy.
We have no announcements planned for today on this panel.
Oh, come on. Well, listen, I think I am so excited about 2026, and my mind just goes wild. I think we need to run somebody for every seat.
No doubt.
And we need to run against every Democrat out there. We need to be very cautious, but we need to eyeball every Democrat seat.
Well, you look at some of these districts. I mean, Michael was talking about Katie Stewart down in her region. I want to point this out. So this is how much guts Katie Stewart has. On that homeschool bill, which she sponsored, they subbed her out of the committee so she didn't have to put a vote on it. That's how scared she is. That her own bill, she wouldn't go on the record and vote for it because they were that scared about her seat. There's definitely opportunities.
So see, we have opportunities. And so that's why my mind just goes wild. But that's what we need to be eyeballing instead of each other's Republican seats. So we need to be eyeballing and targeting all those Democratic seats and saying, hey, this is your district. What say you? And look at good candidates and start targeting those Democratic seats because they are running scared right now.
Yep.
So that's why I was saying we need to watch, listen, think, and then act because we've got a real shot here and we can take the country back in Illinois. We can really do that. We can really do this.
And I think we need to remember in every single one of these seats, our goal should be to, in the primary, elect the most conservative person who can win. The most conservative person who can win. Because, look, I'm a downstate gun-owning Christian farm kid. I would love to put super conservatives in every seat, but I'm also a realist. And I know in the Cook County and the Collier counties, these are +5 Democrat, +10 Democrat. I couldn't win those seats. And we don't need to sacrifice our values, fiscal responsibility, personal responsibility, business-friendly taxes and regulation, lead with a moral compass, but we can find people that fit a district better than others. And so it's always the most conservative person who can win.
Well, this is the thing.
This
is the thing that I've really been thinking about, especially since this last presidential election. So there were 2.4 million people in this state that voted for Donald Trump for president, right? And if you look back to that midterm when Pritzker got reelected, 2022, he got 2.1 million votes, right? So there's two kinds of people in this state that we as Republicans and people that are, county GOP chairs or precinct committeemen need to focus on. There's people that need to be convinced to vote, right? We all know people that vote straight Republican. They're diehard Trump supporters. They show up in a presidential election, but then in a midterm, they're like, why bother, right? Like in St. Clair County, where I live, there were 15,000 people that voted for President Trump in 2024 that did not vote in 2022. So imagine if we got those people out to vote in a midterm. If they voted for President Trump, how do you think they're going to vote for governor? Probably a Republican, right?
Exactly.
So you've got
Exactly.
in every county in the state, we have people that kind of fit that bill, right? That need to be convinced to vote in a midterm and understand that their vote matters in every election, not just the presidential. And then we have people that, they're on the fence. I don't really know about these Republicans. Should I vote for them? I don't know. Those people, we have to persuade that, hey, you need to vote for Republican. For the Republican candidate for governor. We need a change in this state, right? So there's those two buckets. And we always have to be looking for those people, identifying them, and either convincing them to vote Republican for the first time or convincing them to vote Republican every time.
Yeah.
And you're going to know that person in your county. You're going to be the best person to know. The precinct committeeman, your neighbor, who you go to church with, you're going to be the person to know that person. Nobody else can do that but you in each respective county. The chairman, the precinct committeeman, the people that your neighbor, the person you go to church with. That's exactly how it works. It's a bottom up, not a top down.
Well, and I think we're going to see the egos truly come out in the Democrat Party in this election. And they are going to be going after each other tooth and nail and bloodying each other up. And it's an absolute golden opportunity for a good conservative electable candidate to step in and say, I'm here. I'm here.
I'm an adult in the room.
And I can do this job. And people are going to say, okay, these people are obviously always, they are absolutely horrible because they've told us they are. And so now I've got somebody that sounds reasonable and I can finally vote for somebody.
And I was asked to give a comment, and I've always been a glass half full kind of person.
No.
You know that.
No.
You know that.
You make Michael Butler look like a pessimist. Come on.
But we do. I just see it in that way. But we can't be afraid. And the only thing I could say, of course, I see better days ahead for us.
And we can't stay home.
And we can't stay home. We can't be afraid. We have to fear not, to be strong, because we could be of good courage and be strong, but we have to work.
Yep.
We can't sit back on our laurels. We have to work. We have to do what's possible and let the good Lord do what's seemingly impossible.
Yeah.
But it is possible, and we can do it.
Yeah, let's close with this thought. As Bernie Sanders and AOC are gallivanting around the country, as J.B. Pritzker is using language like fight and punch Trump in the face and all this incendiary, violent language which is leading to violence in the streets, we saw what happened the last time Democrats did this. When they burned down Chicago and tried to burn down our cities, you saw the end result of the leftist policies. And that's what they're pushing for right now. We're going to see this environment as we move toward 2026. And so I want to leave you with that we've got opportunity, we've got potential. Our opponents are crazy. We are the adults in the room. We are the real, reasonable human beings that make up regular working families of the state. We can win. Let's work together to do it. Please give another round of applause to our great panel here. As I mentioned, this is the smoke-filled room. Please go to itslong9.studio to subscribe. We do this every week. We cover the stuff that nobody else in the media is covering, so you know what's happening out there. So please, check us out. We'd love to have you become one of our latest subscribers. Thank you guys for your time.